Welcome back to Justice Insight Cam. We bring you unfiltered, real-world police interactions recorded straight from body cameras. Moving beyond the video, we analyze the facts, legal boundaries, and critical takeaways from each case. Let us explore the reality of justice.
Tengan cuidado, hombre, se van a caer. Te vas a caer, mija, hombre.
Okay. ¿Tienes estatus postal aquí?
Sí, mija, yo tengo todo. Tengo una residencia.
Don't move! The words tear through the wind like a warning flare, 30 feet above a warehouse lot, on a roof that pitches just enough to make your stomach tighten. A man in a dark jacket scrambles on hands and knees. His boots skid on granules of old tar. His gloved fingers claw for purchase along a seam line, and for a second, just a second, his weight shifts wrong. Below him, the morning looks unreal. Tiny cars, tiny people, the white glare of sun bouncing off wet concrete. Somewhere down there, someone screams, "Get down!" And then, from the roof's edge, a worker's voice explodes upward, raw, furious, shaking with more than fear. "Take off your mask! Show your face!" The masked agent freezes, chest heaving. His radio crackles. Sirens rise in the distance. Metal bangs. A crowd forms because crowds always form when something feels wrong. He came for paperwork, for documents, for papers. Now he's on a roof, one misstep away from turning a routine enforcement operation into a death. And by nightfall, the video will be everywhere. One masked federal agent climbing a dangerous roof to check papers, and a worker yelling the sentence that makes authority panic. Not because it's insulting, because it's exposure. To protect privacy, names, locations, and some details are reconstructed. This is a fictionalized composite inspired by recurring patterns described in workplace enforcement complaints and civil rights litigation. This started the way these stories often start, with an email, a plain subject line, a list of names, a promise that it would be quick. At 5:42 a.m., Special Agent Nolan Reese sat in the passenger seat of an unmarked SUV, staring at a printed briefing sheet that felt heavier than paper should. Nolan was 28, lean, intense, and still knew enough to federal work that he believed in checklists the way some people believe in prayer. He'd transferred in from another unit 6 months ago, and he had been desperate to prove he belonged. Yes to overtime. Yes to extra assignments. Yes to anything that suggested he was useful. He'd been told something simple. Warehouse, early morning. High likelihood of non-compliant workers. Verify identities, serve paperwork, make arrests if warranted. Do not let anyone slip away. That last part wasn't written in the memo. It lived in his supervisor's voice. "Don't let them scatter," Supervisory Agent Leon Hart had said during the pre-brief. "You're tapping the table like the tap itself would enforce compliance. Last week we went in soft and they vanished. Today we do it clean, tight, controlled. Controlled. It's a word that can mean safety, and it's a word that can become obsession." The target site was a logistics warehouse on the edge of an industrial district. Long gray building, dock doors like open mouths, trailers lined up like teeth, the kind of place that runs on invisible labor. Forklifts, scanners beeping, workers who clock in before sunrise and leave after dark. Officially, the operation wasn't a raid, it was an audit, an administrative compliance check, a request for documents. But everyone in that SUV knew what it would look like. Badges, vests, shouting, fear. And fear, in a workplace, moves faster than law. Lee Nolan looked at his reflection in the window, jaw clenched, eyes tired, and then at the black face covering folded in his lap. The mask was standard now for this team. It was supposed to protect identities, reduce the risk of retaliation. Officer safety. But Nolan had always hated it, because masks change the story before anyone speaks. A badge can say authority, a mask can say threat. And when you combine the two, people don't see a government employee, they see an abduction. Still, Nolan pulled the mask up as they turned onto the access road. He told himself procedure was procedure. He told himself the badge would speak for itself. He was wrong. The warehouse was called Westmore Fulfillment, and at 6:17 a.m., it smelled like diesel exhaust and wet cardboard. A thin fog clung low to the ground, and floodlights over the loading bays made the fog glow like smoke. A security guard at the gate looked confused as the SUVs rolled in. "We're here for management," Hart said, flashing credentials in a motion too fast for the guard to read. "Open it." The gate swung. Inside, the lot was already busy. Workers in hoodies and reflective vests moved toward the employee entrance, coffee cups steaming in the cold. A few laughed, the normal, fragile, ordinary. Matteo Serrano was one of them. 26, forklift certified. A man who kept his head down because he had learned that attention is expensive. His work authorization card lived in his wallet behind a faded family photo, not because he expected to be asked for it every day, but because he'd learned that just in case isn't paranoia when you've seen someone pulled aside for the wrong reason. Luis Rojas, the foreman, stood near the entrance with a clipboard and a coffee that had gone cold. Luis was the kind of leader who watched for hazards other people ignored. Loose straps on pallets, broken lights by the dock, a trainee who looked too tired to be safe. He'd spent years keeping younger guys from making one reckless move that could take a hand, a back, a life. So when the SUVs stopped and men stepped out in black vests and masks, Luis didn't think audit. He thought, instantly, this will turn dangerous. He saw Mateo's shoulders tense. He saw another worker's eyes widen. And he heard the word that travels faster than sirens in places like this. La migra, someone whispered. Immigration. It doesn't matter if you're documented, undocumented, born here, or waiting on paperwork. When people see masks and badges, the fear hits first, and the facts arrive later, if they arrive at all. Luis lifted a hand toward his crew, instinctive. "Stay together," he murmured. "Don't run." But the SUVs had already changed the air. Then Hart raised a hand and called out, loud enough for the whole lot to hear. "Everyone stop where you are. We need to speak with you." Wrong move. People don't stop when they feel cornered. They scatter. A forklift beeped as it reversed. A dock door slammed. 2 workers ducked behind a row of parked vans. Someone took off running toward the side of the building. Luis cursed under his breath. "Don't!" he yelled, but his voice got swallowed by panic. Hart swore. "Go!" he barked, and Nolan went. Because when you're new, you run when the supervisor says, run. Nolan sprinted along the building side, boots hitting gravel, radio bouncing against his vest. His eyes tracked a figure in a grey hoodie moving fast toward a back stairwell. "Stop!" Nolan yelled. "Federal agents!" The figure didn't stop. Nolan's mind narrowed. In pursuit, you see one person, one trajectory, one objective. Everything else becomes background noise. He reached the stairwell and saw the grey hoodie vanish upward. Up, not out. Up. Nolan's stomach tightened. The stairwell led to a maintenance platform, and beyond that, roof access. The kind of access meant for HVAC repairs, not foot chases. Nolan hesitated at the base of the stairs. He heard Hart's voice in his head. "Don't let them slip away." He heard another voice too. Older and quieter, something from training. "Do not pursue into unsafe environments without backup." Nolan looked down at the lot. He saw agents trying to corral workers. He saw phones lifting. He saw panic turning into anger. And then he saw the grey hoodie worker stop at the landing and look down at him, eyes wide, chest heaving like an animal cornered. Nolan raised his hand slightly. "Hey," he called up, trying to steady his voice. "Stop. We just need to talk. Show me your identification. That's it. The man didn't answer. He moved again, higher, toward the roof door. Nolan went up the stairs 2 at a time. At the top, the roof door was ajar, wind spilling through the crack like a warning. Nolan put a hand on the door. For 1 second, he considered closing it, ending the chase, calling for backup. And then his radio crackled with Hart's voice, tight and furious. "Reese, where are you?" Nolan pressed the transmit button. "On the side stairwell," he said. Subject moved to the roof. A pause, then Hart's answer, clipped. "Do not lose him." 4 words, and Nolan pushed the door open. The roof was worse than Nolan expected, not flat, not safe. An older structure with a slight pitch, scattered with gravel and tar patches. VAC units sat like metal beasts. Vent pipes rose like obstacles. Along the edge, the roof dropped to the lot, 30 feet down to concrete. The wind up there was louder, making it harder to hear the world below. It tugged at Nolan's vest, at the mask strap against his cheek. The worker, grey hoodie, moved fast toward the far side where the roof dipped behind an HVAC cluster. "Stop!" Nolan shouted. The worker glanced back. His eyes met Nolan's for a half second. Fear, not guilt, not aggression. Fear. "Don't!" Nolan called. "You're going to fall!" The worker didn't slow. Nolan ran forward, boots skidding slightly. Gravel rolled under his soles. He fought to keep his balance, arms lifting instinctively. He rounded an HVAC unit and found himself facing not one worker, but 2. One in the grey hoodie, and another man in a bright orange safety vest, planted near a vent pipe with his hands raised like a barrier. The man in the vest was mid-30s, weathered face, stubble, the posture of someone used to protecting people. He wasn't running, he was holding ground. The grey hoodie worker held a folded piece of paper in his hand. It fluttered in the wind. "I have it," the hoodie man said, voice shaking. I have my papers." Nolan took a step closer. "Okay," he said, trying to keep it calm. "Good, show them to me, slowly." The man in the vest snapped his head toward Nolan. "Why are you wearing a mask?" he demanded. Nolan blinked. "I'm federal law enforcement," he said. "I'm here for verification. Just take it off," the vest man said, sharp. "Take off your mask. Show your face." It hit Nolan like a slap because it wasn't just defiance. It was accusation. On this roof, wind, fear, distance from the crowd, the mask didn't look like safety equipment. It looked like concealment. Nolan's hand moved toward his chest where his badge was clipped. "I can show you my credentials," he said. The vest man's voice rose. "A badge in a mask means nothing," he shouted. "Show your face." The grey hoodie worker held the paper out. Nolan focused on the paper. That was his objective. Verify. Confirm. Finish. He stepped closer, and his boot slid. A small slip, but the sensation was immediate and sickening. The roof tilted under him. Gravel shifted. His stomach dropped. His arms shot out. The vest man lunged forward instinctively, grabbing Nolan's sleeve. For one breath, they were connected. Worker and agent. 2 men on a roof, both trying not to die. Nolan regained balance, heart hammering so hard he could taste metal. The vest man released him, eyes blazing. "You almost fell," he said, voice lower now. "You're going to kill someone doing this." Nolan swallowed. He looked past them to the roof edge, too close, and below, the muffled roar of people was rising. Shouts, phones, sirens closer now. He should have backed away. Instead, he did what desperation does. He tried to finish quickly. "Give me the paper," Nolan said. The grey hoodie worker hesitated. The vest man stepped between them. "No," he said. "You can check from there. You don't get to grab him, and you don't get to hide behind that mask." Nolan's radio crackled. "Reese," Hart barked. "Status?" Nolan pressed the button. eyes locked on the vest man. "On the roof," he said. "Two subjects. One has documents." "Detain," Hart said. "Bring them down." Nolan's hands shook slightly as he released the radio. Bring them down. How? One stairwell door behind him, a dangerous roof underfoot, two men in front, a crowd below. Nolan took a breath and forced his voice steady. "Okay," he said. "Listen, nobody needs to get hurt. We're going down the stairs. I just need to confirm identity." The vest man's laugh was short and bitter. "Confirm?" he repeated. "You chased us onto a roof. That's not confirming, that's hunting." Nolan flinched. He didn't respond because he didn't have the language to make hunting sound like procedure. The grey hoodie worker's hands trembled as he held the paper out again. Nolan leaned forward, careful now, staying back, reading without grabbing. A work authorization card, laminated, edges worn. The kind of thing carried like a fragile promise. Nolan scanned it. The name didn't match the briefing sheet. The photo wasn't a match. The expiration date was valid. In other words, this man was not who they were looking for. Heat rose in Nolan's face beneath the mask. Okay, Nolan said quietly. "You're not..." The vest man cut him off. "So you chased the wrong man onto a roof," he said, masked, yelling like we're animals. Nolan's mouth opened. No defense arrived, because there wasn't one. Down in the lot, the scene had turned into a spectacle. Workers clustered, some crying, some furious, many filming. A Westmore supervisor stood near the entrance with hands out, begging for calm. Local police cruisers had arrived, lights flashing. A uniformed sergeant stepped toward Hart, palm out. "Who's in charge here?" the sergeant demanded. "I am," Hart snapped. "What's your paperwork?" the sergeant asked. "You on private property with masked personnel. I need to see what authorizes this." Hart's expression hardened. "Federal operation," he said, like the phrase ended the discussion. "It doesn't," the sergeant replied. "Not when you've got a crowd. Why, and your people are triggering panic." Hart leaned in. "Back off," he said. "You're interfering." The sergeant didn't flinch. "And you're escalating," he said. "Show me the document or you're going to have a bigger problem than you planned for." Around them, workers shouted questions. "Do you have a warrant?" "Why masks?" "Who are you?" That word, warrant, hung in the air like a flare. Because in moments like this, people don't argue policy, they argue legitimacy. Then the crowd heard the shouting from above. They looked up, and they saw it. A masked agent on a roof, moving awkwardly in the wind. Two workers near the edge. A dangerous distance from safety. Phones tilted upward. The clip caught the line that would explode across the internet. "Take off your mask! Show your face!" On the roof, Koi, Nolan's training finally screamed louder than his supervisor. "This is unsafe. This is uncontrolled. This is wrong." He stepped back slowly, hands open. "Okay," he said. "We're going down. Nobody's under arrest." The vest man stared at him. "Say it loud," he demanded. "Say it so they can hear." Nolan glanced toward the edge. He could see the crowd below, faces turned upward, phones lifted. His throat tightened. "I'm not arresting you," Nolan said louder. "We're going down." The vest man didn't move. "Take off the mask," he said again, quieter now, not a taunt, a demand for accountability. Nolan hesitated, feeling the conflict. Policy versus humanity, safety versus trust, procedure versus what the mask had become. He lifted his hands to the straps. In his mind, he saw Hart's face, furious, it warning him about compromising identity. Then Nolan pulled the mask down. Cold air hit his mouth, his chin, his skin. He felt exposed. The vest man stared at his face, as if confirmation mattered. "You look young," the vest man said, almost surprised. Nolan didn't answer, because he was young, and young in enforcement, can be deadly because youth mistakes adrenaline for competence. The grey hoodie worker swallowed hard. "We have families," he said quietly. Nolan nodded once. "I know," he said. It wasn't enough, but it was something. They moved toward the stairwell, slow, careful steps. Nolan stayed back, aware that one slip could turn this into tragedy. At the roof door, the vest man stopped and turned. "You chased him," he said, "but you didn't chase the paperwork." Nolan frowned. "What?" he asked. You didn't talk to management," the vest man said. "You didn't ask for records. You wanted bodies." Bodies. That word landed heavy. Nolan didn't respond, because in that moment he wasn't sure the man was wrong. They came down the stairs into a hallway that smelled like machine oil and bleach. At the bottom, local police were waiting, along with Hart. Hart's eyes took in the scene. Nolan's face uncovered, the workers in front, the crowd behind glass doors. "What the hell happened?" Hart hissed. Nolan tried to speak. "Wrong person," he said. "He has valid authorization." Hart's jaw tightened. "Then why are you up there?" Hart demanded. Nolan's voice came out thin. "He ran," he said. "He ran because you showed up masked and shouting," the vest man snapped. He thought you were kidnapping him." Hart turned toward the vest man. "Sir, step back," Hart warned. The vest man didn't move. "I want your name," he said. "I want your badge number. I want to know who climbed onto a roof to check a piece of plastic." The sergeant raised a hand. "Everybody take a breath," he said. "This ends now." Hart stepped closer to Nolan. "Mask," he said through clenched teeth. "Back on." Nolan didn't move, not because he was defiant, because he finally understood the mask had become the story. Hart cursed and turned away, barking orders. "Shut it down," he said. "We're leaving. Now!" Agents moved toward SUVs. Some kept heads down. The crowd followed, shouting questions. Phones stayed up. Nolan watched Mateo trembling. Mateo's hands were still shaking like his body hadn't gotten the memo that the danger had passed. Nolan wanted to say something that mattered. All he managed was, "I'm sorry." Mateo looked at him with exhaustion. "Sorry doesn't give me my breath back," Mateo said. Then he turned away. In the back seat of the unmarked SUV, Nolan sat with the mask still down and his hands trembling in his lap. He could still feel the roof sliding under him. He could still feel Luis's grip on his sleeve, the involuntary act of a worker saving the agent who chased him. Hart paced outside the vehicle, jaw working, barking into his phone. "They're making a scene," Hart snapped. "Because they ran. Because they always run." Nolan stared at the dashboard. He thought about saying, "They ran because we looked like a threat." He didn't say it. Not yet. Because the thing he feared most in that moment wasn't discipline. It was the possibility that he was becoming exactly what he'd promised himself he wouldn't become. A man who confuses control with safety. By noon, the clip was everywhere. It didn't need context to feel wrong. A masked agent on a roof. A worker shouting for his face. A near slip that could have ended in a body on concrete. Local stations replayed it. National commentators debated it. Online, people argued about law and borders and safety. But the question that kept cutting through was simpler. Why didn't they verify first? 2 days later, Westmore's management produced what they said they'd been holding back. A notice of inspection, an administrative request for employment eligibility documents, an I-9 audit notice, delivered electronically, not in person. Meaning, the operation was supposed to be paperwork, not a dawn arrival with masks. The company's attorney released a statement. They had been prepared to comply. They had scheduled a document review. They had not expected agents to enter the property like it was an emergency. Hart released his own statement, careful and cold. Operational decisions are made in the interest of officer safety and public safety. Public safety, hard to argue with, harder to accept when public safety looks like a foot chase onto a roof. Then came another detail from local police footage. Hart off to the side, telling an officer, "We had intel they'd run." When asked what that intel was, it blurred into words that sounded like certainty but weren't. Tips, patterns, experience, no specifics. And when you have no specifics, you have assumption. Yeah, Mateo didn't sleep much after the incident. His partner said he would jolt awake, sweating, repeating the word roof, like it meant the sky itself had become unsafe. Nolan didn't sleep much either. He told himself he was fine. He went through the motions, shower, coffee, stare at the wall. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw the gravel shift under his boot. He heard the worker's voice, "Take off your mask," like the sentence had lodged inside his skull. He had pursued a man who wasn't even his target. He had risked a fall. He had risked pulling someone else with him. And the only reason this wasn't a funeral was a foreman's reflex. That thought didn't let him rest. Luis became a reluctant face of the story. "They didn't identify," he told a reporter. "They were masked. They were shouting. My guys thought they were being taken. If you come at people like that, you create danger." When asked why he shouted, "Take off your mask," Luis didn't smirk. "I want to know who is doing this," he said. "If you're proud of what you're doing, don't hide." It wasn't politics. It was accountability. Inside the agency, the mood turned defensive, then anxious. Nolan was called into an internal review. A windowless room, a table, a supervisor with a folder thick enough to intimidate. "Walk us through it," the reviewer said. Nolan did. The lot, the masks, the scattering, the chase, the roof, the slip, the documents, the realization that Mateo wasn't the target. "Why did you pursue onto the roof?" the reviewer asked. Nolan's mouth went dry. "Because my supervisor told me not to lose him," he said. The pen paused. Did you have backup?" "No." "Did you assess the roof for safety?" "No." "Did you have reason to believe the subject posed an immediate threat?" Nolan hesitated. "No," he said quietly. "And why?" the reviewer asked. "Did you move closer instead of maintaining distance and calling for support?" Nolan swallowed. "Because I thought if I checked the papers, it would end," he said. The reviewer looked up. "End for who?" she asked. Nolan didn't answer because he knew. He wanted it to end for him. He wanted the problem resolved fast so he wouldn't look incompetent, so he wouldn't be the rookie who let someone get away. He had turned verification into pursuit, and pursuit had turned into danger. Then the agency reviewed the broader operation. Why masks for an administrative audit? Why a dawn arrival instead of a scheduled records meeting? Why were agents engaging workers in the lot before contacting management? One internal email surfaced, written the night before. "Pressure is up. We need results." Results. It didn't say quotas. It didn't have to. The email became public through litigation, and once it was public, the story reframed itself. Nolan wasn't just reckless. He was young and pressured inside a machine that rewards action more than caution. That doesn't excuse him, but it explains why he climbed. The lawsuit arrived 3 weeks later, aimed at the operation plan, the supervisory decisions, and the practice of masked enforcement without clear identification during administrative workplace actions. Mateo's claim wasn't that he was perfect. It was that his rights didn't disappear because someone guessed he wasn't supposed to be there. The government denied wrongdoing. They argued no one was injured, no one was arrested, no formal detention occurred. Then Mateo's attorney played the video and asked a simple question. If a masked agent orders you to stop, chases you, and corners you on a roof. Is that freedom? The room didn't need an answer out loud. Everyone had one in their body. During depositions, Hart admitted he expected people would run. Asked why, he said, experience. Asked if he had specific information that Mateo or Luis were undocumented, he said, no. Then the questioning turned to paperwork, the paperwork Hart insisted existed. Did you have a judicial warrant? Mateo's attorney asked. Hart's answer was careful. This was an administrative action, he said, a compliance inspection. So no warrant, the attorney clarified. Hart tightened his jaw. No judicial warrant. And you chose masks and a dawn approach for an administrative inspection, the attorney said, letting the sentence sit in the air. Detain, bring them down. Hart shifted in his chair. I didn't mean, he started. You didn't mean for an agent to chase a worker onto a roof? The attorney asked. Hart hesitated. Correct, he said. But you gave a detention order without knowing who he was, without verifying identity, and while your agent was in an unsafe position, the attorney pressed. Hart's silence stretched. On another day of testimony, a safety consultant described the roof pitch, the gravel surface, the lack of fall protection, details that sounded boring until you pictured a body slipping toward the edge. Even the local police report, entered as an exhibit, noted the crowd's agitation and the rapid escalation caused by masked personnel. The judge didn't give a speech. She didn't need to. She simply said, "Administrative authority is not a license for recklessness." With no warrant and no specific identification, the case became about presumption. What happens when assumption drives action? The agency's mask guideline allowed face coverings in certain operations where identity exposure created risk. It also required clear agency markings and verbal identification whenever possible. The video showed the opposite. The first thing the lot heard was, "Everyone stop. Stop is not information. Stop is control. And control without explanation invites fear. Fear invites flight. Flight invites pursuit. Pursuit invites danger. It is a chain." The settlement took months, mostly because institutions hate admitting the obvious. They offered money with confidentiality first. Mateo refused. Luis urged him to refuse, because confidentiality would turn terror into a private inconvenience, and that's how the next crew ends up on the next roof. Eventually, the government agreed to a public settlement with policy changes. Restrictions on masked enforcement during administrative workplace audits, unless specific threats were documented. Mandatory coordination with local law enforcement for crowd safety. Clear verbal identification at first contact. And a prohibition on unsafe pursuits onto elevated structures unless there was imminent risk to life. Nolan was suspended without pay for a period. Hart received discipline too. Reprimand, reassignment. No one was fired publicly. That part made people angry. But the policy changes were real, written, and in enforcement. What is written can save lives later. Months after the settlement, Nolan stood in a training room watching the footage again, full length this time, not the viral cut. The moment he slipped, the moment Luis grabbed his sleeve, the moment Luis screamed, "Take off your mask!" The trainer paused the video on the roof edge. "Tell me what you see," the trainer said. Nolan's throat tightened. "I see a situation we created," he admitted. "We escalated. We didn't verify. We made people run." "And what could have happened?" the trainer asked. Nolan stared at the frozen drop. "Someone could have died," he said. The trainer nodded once. "And then it wouldn't matter what paperwork you had," he said. "It would matter that you chose danger." Nolan thought of Luis, worker, foreman, protector, saving the agent who chased his crew. A man treated as suspicious, keeping the badge from becoming a tragedy. It was the twist Nolan couldn't forget because it made everything human. A year later, Westmore ran differently. Management required written contact and legal counsel for any agency visit. Workers talked about the roof in hushed voices, the way people talk about near accidents, like the air itself remembers. Luis moved to another site. Mateo stayed. But he watched unmarked SUVs with a distrust that didn't fade, and the public moved on to new headlines. But the lesson stayed, sharp and simple. When authority approaches like a shadow, people react like prey. And when fear becomes the operating system, everyone becomes less safe. Agents, workers, bystanders, all of them. If you watched that video, if you saw a masked man climb a roof to demand paperwork, would you trust that scene to end safely every time? That's the point. It won't. Not unless verification comes before force. So when people remember that morning, they don't remember the memo. They remember the roof. They remember the wind. They remember the slip. They remember the worker's voice cutting through the air. Take off your mask, because in that moment it wasn't just a demand for a face. It was a demand for a system to stop hiding behind urgency and start living by the simplest rule of power. Verify first, and never chase paper at the cost of a life.
We appreciate you tuning in. If this breakdown helped you understand the situation better, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Justice Insight Cam. Stay aware, stay protected, and we will see you next time.